Well, let's go ahead and solve this quadratic equation. 4x squared minus 5 equals to negative 6x. And what's the first thing we look for? We need to rewrite this in descending powers and have it equal to 0. So I'm going to add 6x to both sides. And we end up with 4x squared plus 6x minus 5 equals to 0. So notice again, I wrote this in descending powers. The x squared term comes first, the first power or linear term, and then the constant term. And it equals to 0. So it's in form to solve for the quadratic by the quadratic formula. A is this number, 4. B is the coefficient of x, that's 6. And then c is the constant, negative 5. So our formula, let me squeeze an end up here, x equals to minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. I always think it's a good idea, if you haven't done much of this, very good idea to write that formula down. So, the less you have in your head and the more you have on paper in front of your eyes, I think the safer it is to do these problems. All right, well, x equals to minus b, so it'll be minus 6. And then plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2a. So I plugged all those numbers in, and we have two negatives which will cancel. That's over here. Minus and the negative will make everything a plus there. So under the square root, 6 squared is 36 plus, and here we've got 80. 36 plus 80, which is 116. So we can write out our tentative answer. X is negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 116 divided by 8. All right, well, we're not done by any means, because the square root of 116 can be simplified. If we can divide 4 into 116 evenly, and 4 is a perfect square, so we can simplify this. I need to make some room, so I'm going to do some erasing here. Okay, I've erased the board and recopied where we left off up here, and I'm going to simplify this square root. So we can do that by factoring a 4 out of 116, and 4 goes in the 116. Looks like 29 times to me, over 8, so square root of 4 will become a 2. X equals to negative 6 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 29, everything divided by 8. And don't forget, this division line goes under the entire everything up here, not just part of it. Some people get lazy about drawing that. All right, well, 6 and 2, we can factor 2 out of these terms. So I'll factor 2 out, and that leaves negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 29, and that's divided by 8. And now we can cancel the 2 with the 8 down here. Since 2 is a factor, it will cancel off with the 8 down below. And we get our simplified form. This is the exact form of the answer. Negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 29 divided by 4. So here's our exact answer. Sometimes I call it the exact symbolic answer, because square root of 29 is a symbol for an irrational number, a decimal number. And it would be impossible to write the decimal number down with perfect precision, because it goes forever and there's no pattern. So we can never represent the decimal form of this answer exactly, but we can represent it in symbolic form. Well, And what good is it though? You know, this is a great answer from the standpoint of algebra. It's been simplified, it's precise, but if you really need to use this in something practical, then you want to know the decimal answer or a decimal approximation. So I'm going to require, if you're my student, I require you to calculate this, and usually I'll ask for 3 decimal places, round off to 3 decimal places. So let's go ahead and do that. And in order to calculate this, I first need to separate the answers. So x is -3 plus the square root of 29 over 4. It's also -3 minus the square root of 29 over 4. So I like to also show this, or to emphasize that this means there are 2 separate answers. All right, well, time to drag out your calculator to see if you can get this. And one thing, at least mentally, you should be thinking about is that we should have parentheses around the numerator. Your calculator, your scientific calculator that is, that you're supposed to have, will have a left and a right parentheses. And when you put things in parentheses, then you complete that operation. So we can't divide by 4 until we combine these numbers together. So, and you can do that on a calculator using the parentheses. So I'll talk my way through solving this. I'm going to punch in left parentheses, -3 plus square root of 29, close parentheses. Now, some of you will punch it as I said it, and some of you need to do a little bit something different, because unfortunately not all the calculators work the same. Graphing calculators and many of the newer calculators, particularly the ones which show what you're typing in on the screen, they tend to allow you to, on square roots, to punch in the square root key first and then 29. And so on those calculators you would punch in left parentheses, -3 plus square root 29, close parentheses. Other calculators, some older scientific calculators, maybe some cheaper ones, sometimes you have to hit 29 and then hit the square root button. Or you might even have to hit 3 first and then hit the plus minus sign in order to change the sign to a negative. So you would just have to experiment if you're not familiar with that well with your calculator, which way that works. So if you have an old style calculator, this is how I think you would do it. You would punch in left parentheses, 3 plus minus sign to change it to a negative, plus 29, square root button, right parentheses. However you punch it, once you're done getting this in, then you want to hit divide by 4 and then equal. So I get, and round your answer off. If it needs to be rounded up, you need to round it up. So x is approximately, from here I got 0.596. And on the other one, here's how I'm punching it. Left parentheses, -3 minus square root 29, right parentheses, divided by 4, enter, or equal, -2.096. Now, neither of these needed to be rounded up because the next decimal was a 2. It did not need to be rounded, but sometimes you will need to round, and I expect you to do that. All right, so I round these off to 3 places, and this is the approximate decimal answer. I'll just abbreviate here, approximate decimal answer. And I also use the wavy equal sign, which means approximately equal to. So there we go. Now, when you solve these with a complex number answer, the calculation is quite a bit different, because when you have i's here, then we have to adopt a different way of calculating that. So I want you to really pay attention to that when you see the next video on solving one with complex numbers.